Hello and welcome. I'm Vila Lucas, certified healer and guide with the Modern Mystery School. This is the Inner Radiance podcast. Each episode, we talk about how you can live your light from the inside out. And our guests help us tease it out and understand what that means to be living authentically, joyfully, and with your brilliance each moment of every day. I've been doing this Inner Radiance podcast for the last couple months, and it's just such a joy. I absolutely love it because I get to bring in amazing people like Vanessa and other colleagues of mine and friends, and we just get to chew on really, really juicy topics that help us understand how we can live more in the light of our own divinity, the light of our own truth in our day-to-day lives. So I'm here today with Vanessa Nova, certified guide with the Modern Mystery School also, and just all around amazing ladies, super creative, artist, musician, performer, singer, model, creator. I mean, how many other titles, Vanessa? How many titles can we find for you? I think a lot.
Well, we are multidimensional beings, so we can wear whatever hats we like to wear, but definitely creative endeavors, entrepreneurial endeavors, spiritual endeavors is what ties all of things together that I do, and also who I love to serve. Obviously, love to serve everyone, but the people that I generally tend to love working with and who are attracted to the things that I'm offering in the world are people who are in these lines of creativity and entrepreneurship and impact. So that's more of what the kinds of hats that I like to wear. Yeah.
Fantastic. I love it. So we are just going to launch into this topic today. So it's a doozy. It's a good one. I mean, it's rich on so many levels. And I'm so excited, Vanessa, that you got excited about this topic when I suggested it, because community really is so important to us, so important to us as humans in general. And then spiritual community adds in a particular set of flavors, a particular set of needs that it meets for us as humans. And right now we're in a really interesting spot kind of in human history where there's a lot of spiritual energy on the planet. There's a lot of access to the realm of spirit right now, kind of more than there has been in a really, really, really long time. And yet, the state of humanity from a spiritual perspective is kind of all over the map. Perhaps we could say even a giant mess. See if you agree with that statement. But where are we at with spiritual communities? We kind of moved away from them in a lot of contexts of religion, and I think it's left this sort of void. It's left this empty spot where there's a true need or desire or function that is fulfilled through spiritual community that is really natural to us as humans that is kind of missing right now. So curious if, first of all, if you agree with those statements, Vanessa, and then how else you might introduce this topic.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And, based on what you just said, a few things that are coming forward for me. There's a couple of things happening right now. One of them is, of course, we're moving into a time of spirituality, like you said. We moved from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. We're moving into this place of innovation and waking up on the planet. And that's been prophesized for, thousands and thousands of years that we would move into a place of enlightenment. So we're moving into this new renaissance, this new age of enlightenment. And the other thing that's happened is because of whatever cycle we went through and technology, the polarization, politics, industrialization, all of these things that have happened over the last hundreds of years cycles, and like you said, religion, we have gone into a place of soullessness.
Mm,
And I feel like, the many people that I work with are talking about how they lost their spirituality or they feel like they're not on track with who they really are. And they're so hungry for the spiritual connection. So they're
yes.
seeking it out. And I think you said also that it's kind of all over the map and it's a mess. And I think that's true. And I like to say pretty often that, like, the world is metaphysically lost.
Mm,
We are so stuck in an illusion that we're just physical.
Yeah.
And those that are so hungry for it are like craving this idea, like they're craving, hungry, thirsty for this remembrance of who they really are.
Yes. So true. I just did a life activation session for a brand new client yesterday. And life activation in the modern mystery school tradition is where we start to help get connected to who we are as spirit, helping get all of those DNA receptor sites opened up to that flow of spiritual energy and spiritual light coming in. And it touched my heart so deeply to work on this particular individual because she is so spiritual, just so tuned in, but kind of so twisted up a little bit. She was actually a body worker. And so I was using a lot of analogies of like massage and body work. And we talked about it like fascia, which is kind of the thin layer that surrounds muscle tissue. And it gets bunched up and it kind of gets crinkly like saran wrap, when you get saran wrap all crinkled up. And that's kind of how our spiritual energy can get, where it's very subtle, it's pervasive, it's all through us. But when we're not paying attention to it, when we're not taking care of it, it can kind of get all wrapped in on itself. And then it's very confusing. And this was kind of my experience in talking with her, is that she's just been confused for a long time. And so it was so beautiful. I felt so honored to get to serve her in this session. And we talked about, like what it would feel like for her to iron some of that out and have flow and ease in her experience of being a spiritual being, here on planet Earth. Because she had said, I just don't like being here. I feel like I don't belong here. Earth feels like a really odd and uncomfortable place to be. And I was like, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, girlfriend, like so many people are exactly in that same place. And I so appreciated that she had an understanding enough of it to be seeking, how can I iron this out for myself? How can I reconnect and get that flow of light, that flow of spirit coming in so that I can understand more about who I am as a spiritual being?
Right, right. And what's happening also as these people are waking up and realizing that they need to connect with these aspects of themselves, it can be really lonely
Yeah.
and it can feel disorienting and it can feel like I'm the only one that's going through this experience of feeling like my life doesn't fit me, like where am I going, who am I, and realizing that there's so much more, or perhaps even, the life that I have built isn't who I am anymore, and I'm leaning into this all these other possibilities of who am I as a spiritual being? And then sometimes your family or friends can't relate to that experience. So it can be even more lonely and more disorienting. So that's when it becomes super, super important to seek out other people who are going through that experience. And like you said, there are so many people right now that are having that experience and can reflect you. And then you can feel like you're not alone and you can feel validated, reflected, supported by other people who are having, this very unique but actually not uncommon experience.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, when I brought up this topic to you, one of the things I love about you, Vanessa, is that you never shy away from edgy topics. And you referred to, you're like, ooh, this is going to be good because there's an edge here to this conversation about why we crave spiritual community. And there is, it's a bit of an edgy topic because there's a particular power in it, right? There's a particular power that exists in the context of spiritual community. And that power can be really, really, really supportive and really, 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 really helpful. Or on the other side, it can be potentially really destructive. And I think, anybody who's been around the world of spirituality for any length of time has had probably both ends of that spectrum, both ends of the spectrum of where being part of some kind of spiritual group or community was really helpful in many ways. And then on the other side might have been damaging or detrimental in ways that may be kind of hard to understand at first, or might have taken a while to sort of get to and understand. So curious that when you were referring to the edginess of this topic, Vanessa, what else you might have been considering in that.
Yeah. So, Well, the questions were, what are some of the pitfalls, and then why do
Mm,
we shy away from it? And I think that goes to, learning, of course, to have discernment, and learning to, both find your way in the community as part of the group, but also as an individual. So I think one of the things that happens is, like, sometimes we lose ourselves in the
yeah.
community. Sometimes there are people that are in charge or leaders that are also haven't done their own work, or perhaps have shadows that haven't been resolved, and then that leaks into the community and then can also be detrimental to the people in the community. We live in a world of light and shadow, and I think there's an opportunity in community for us to be reflected in what things we need to work on. So when we come into community, often we can't hide because everyone around us is a reflection. And then, unfortunately, I have seen situations where people, like you said, have been damaged by community and been damaged by, whatever situation that is. It could be religion, it could be what we could call a cult. And fortunately, I personally have not had the experience of being in a cult where, there's control, there's manipulation, where the actual organization itself, or a person in the organization has bad intentions, or, misaligned intentions. But everyone's human.
Yeah.
We're human. We're divine beings in human bodies, and we make mistakes, and we're all striving towards becoming better, but that doesn't mean we don't have shadows that still need to be worked out. So there is a lot in play here.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's tease this out a little bit. So why do we crave spiritual community? Let's just go straight to that question. So what is it about coming together specifically in spiritual community that's different from coming together, with like a hobby group, a bowling league or a sewing circle or even a music group? What's the difference between coming together in community around a spiritual practice or around a spiritual belief system? What's the difference for us in that?
Well, I would love to hear what you have to say, but I think that on the very basic level, beyond, you mentioned a few examples of just regular communities, we are wired for connection. And there is no shame in that. As human beings, we're wired to be in connection. It's an ancient part of us to be in tribe, to be in community, to create together. And so community is like part of who we are. And as spiritual beings, we are all one. So there is, on that spiritual level, an aspect of us wanting to return to that unity.
Yeah.
So there is that too. But then also, what is the purpose and intention of that particular community? So there's a few layers, and I'd love to hear, what do you think?
Yeah. So I've been a part of a number of different spiritual communities throughout my lifetime. And, I think there's something that happens in the world of spirituality that doesn't happen anywhere else. And I think it's true for religion, and I think it's true for other kinds of spiritual traditions. So, Vanessa, you and I are both trained and practice and teach within the modern mystery school tradition, which is a spiritual community, and it is a spiritually based organization and training school. And I think what happens in the world of spirituality is that we're seeking something. We're seeking something deeper. We're seeking greater knowledge of self and greater knowledge of the mysteries of human life. And then to do that kind of in the context of community, there's a very specific type of magic that happens there. There's a very specific type of opening and synchronicity and communion and connection, like you were saying. It's like it bonds us together in a particular way because we're going to places that we don't necessarily understand from that physical level. We're going beyond the physical to seek something else, and to have other people with us doing that side by side and however that looks is really, really powerful. And it gives us the opportunity to open our heart space in a whole different way, to understand and experience safety in a completely different way. There's kind of different, quote, rules when you come in to a spiritual community, in the sense of like how you connect or what kinds of things are accepted or, quote, normal. So that's sort of where again, the edges can be in a spiritual community because you sort of do have to sort of learn the rules of what is this spiritual community about? Does this suit me? Is this going to get me what I want? And sometimes it can be very difficult to navigate what is true there, because one of the other things that happens in the context of spirituality is that we also have a lot of passion when we're running spiritual energy, right? When we open that heart center and we're running the light through, it ignites our passion. That's the fire energy. That's the energy of spirit. And so it's easy for people to get really riled up, right? In the world of spiritual communities and get excited about things. And you got to do this and you got to try this and you got to understand this. And that's, in which we seek that. Again, as humans, we're looking for that passion, that fire. How can we move beyond the difficulty or the density of physical reality and have this greater experience in the world of spiritual connection within ourselves and with other people? So I think that passion sometimes can be hard for people to navigate when it's not coming from them, when it's somebody else's passion and that they may or may not share, or, they're just not sure yet. Like, do I feel that
Mhm.
same degree of intensity about this
Mhm.
or not? I don't know yet.
Yeah, yeah. When you're talking about this, I can see how that can sometimes from the outside look like some kind of fanaticism.
Right.
And so I have also been wary of different kinds of communities where I'm like, from the outside, I'm like, okay, that's a little weird. Like, that's a little woo woo. But then I put that same mirror back on myself and look at like how we do get really passionate and we love what we do and we are super stoked on the kinds of things that we're about, the topics that we talk about, the kind of people that we stand behind. We get really passionate about it and we want to share about it. So, I do tend to sometimes step outside myself and look at how does this look from the outside, because I can even see myself looking at other communities and going,
Yeah. Well, and another piece here, I think, when we're seeking spiritual knowledge of self, or just, where do I belong? How do I fit in? What is my purpose? These are all spiritual questions, right? That religion kind of used to answer across the board for a lot of people. And now, in the era we're in, people are looking for it more from a lot of diversity of paths. And so I
hmm
think as humans, we really, really, really want to belong. We want to feel like we belong wherever we are. We want to feel like the people who are around us understand us. We want to feel like there's ease in talking about those deeper places, or what I find to be comforting to me on a spiritual level. We want to be affirmed in that. And
hmm
so there's definitely this piece about rightness.
right.
Like spirituality helps us feel right in the world. And whatever that means to you, like I'm making the right choices, or I found the right thing for me, or like I know the truth of who I am. I'm right about this truth. And so when we're in a community of like-minded people, we all agree on like, yes, this is right, then it meets a particular, kind of empty space that you were, referring to earlier, Vanessa, where we want that connection. We want to feel like I'm plugged in correctly. I'm plugged in to what's right for
hmm
me. And all these other people are affirming the rightness of it. And together we're going to take this rightness with all of our passion and do something, and I think that's the other thing in spiritual community, is there tends to be a wanting to share it and kind of be bringing more people into the fold, which again
Right.
is where that edginess can come in.
Yeah, and I want to address that too, because here's another pitfall is that feeling of rightness, that feeling of, okay, I'm validated, like this is right for me. And then all of these other people are saying, yeah, this is right for me. And then to be careful and discerning not to take that rightness and then have it cross over into righteousness.
Yes.
And so there are many paths, there are many ways to God, there are many ways to understand oneself. And if this is the correct and right path for me, and I firmly have a conviction and belief that like what I do and what we are able to share is like the most powerful magic and the most powerful spiritual teachings that I've ever encountered, because I've explored different religions and I've done psychedelics and I've been in part in those kinds of communities as well. and they all have good things to offer. But for me, this has been most powerful for me. But, there is a place where we have to say, like, okay, well, we cannot come across as like becoming righteous. This is the only way.
Yeah. Well, and with that, you mentioned earlier losing ourselves in the context of a spiritual community. And I think that is one of the biggest dangers, because I think what can happen is there's this taking on of a value system from the outside. And it's funny that it happens so easily in this context of spiritual community, because ultimately, spirituality, as we've been saying, is about knowing yourself better. So, what are your personal values? How do you want to be living your life, day to day, and having an experience of what you create as your reality? And so, with an organization that, like the one that we are a part of, the Modern Mystery School, it does offer teachings and training, right? So, it's easy then to say, oh, these are the values that I am supposed to adopt. And, that's one of the things I start out first and foremost as I'm teaching, especially the first step initiation program called Empower Thyself, is that, that's not the point. This would not be an empowering program if you were to just take everything here and adopt it as your new way of looking at everything because you want to be a part of a spiritual community. That's not know thyself. That's take on somebody else's beliefs. But again, we want so badly to belong. We want to feel right, that it's easy to kind of lose ourselves. And then again, like I was saying with the passion earlier, sometimes it's difficult to navigate, is this a value from outside? Or is it my value? I'm not quite sure. And when do you know? And at what point do you realize, like, oh, actually, no, I don't agree with that. I'm curious if you've had that kind of experience, Vanessa, of having to find that discernment in the context of an outside value system.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the beauty of this hermetic tradition, is that it's about asking questions. And it's
Yeah,
about using your discernment. It's about teaching you how to make your own decisions and how to think. And we offer tools, we offer teachings, but it's not to be spoon-fed. It's not religion. It's not
yeah,
dogma. This is, here's what we teach, here are the tools, apply it for yourself, and then you have the opportunity to understand. You have the opportunity to have an experience. And from that experience, then you can decide, does this teaching fit well into my life?
yeah,
Does this tool work for me? And, for the most part, people, when they do apply the tools and teachings, it works for them. But without having that experience and, having the opportunity to choose a new way of looking at the world or yourself or spirituality or reality, and then trying to apply that with, a ritual, a meditation, etc., you wouldn't have the opportunity to look at it that way and to change your perspective or to change your own belief. So that's kind of the way we work, is we want to empower you to have discernment and to take the tools and use them and make them your own. We don't want people to come and be brainwashed, because it's not a cult. It's about giving you tools to know yourself. And there is a pitfall with, like you're saying, for us to lose ourselves. And that's because, in this process of getting to know yourself, you're starting to break down those places where perhaps you're sacrificing your need to be validated or
right.
accepted. And we have to heal through those parts in order to really like come into a place of empowerment.
Absolutely. And I think, that's a big piece of the spiritual journey for a lot of people, right? Is leaving what they've known behind, leaving behind whether it's programming from collective consciousness or family of origin or, just stories that they've held and believed about themselves, in order to step into a more empowered place, in order to step into greater alignment with who am I as a divine being here on planet Earth. And so there is like, okay, I'm letting go of other forms of external programming or external validation. And so then there's this sort of tendency to want to like replace it with like, oh, okay, great. I'll let go of that one, but I'll take on this new one. And that's exactly where it's like, nope, that's not the point here. The point is not to take on any external system of understanding. It's about taking tools, taking teachings, taking trainings, and using that to understand from the inside out, who am I really? And, what really is important to me? What brings me joy? And that really becomes the key to unlocking, what am I here to do? What is my unique life purpose? And how do I find fulfillment as a spiritual being here on the physical plane?
So good. And before we open it up to everyone else in the room to comment and to open up the discussion, I just really want to drop in some juiciness to this conversation about spiritual community. And one of the biggest fruits that I'm so grateful for, because I've been in this community for 15 plus years, and I think you have too. I don't remember your number, but it's been a long time. And one of the most amazing things that I cherish is that I get to build the kind of relationships where I get to see where somebody started 15 years ago or 10 years ago or 5 years ago. And then
Right?
I get to know them now, and I get to see what an incredible person they've become and what they've accomplished and what they've achieved. I get to look back at the whole journey, and it reflects my own, and it reflects how much I've grown and how far I've come. And I have all of these rich relationships with people all around the world, with like the most freaking awesome people that I could
Yes.
ever be grateful to know. And I get
It's
to collaborate with them. How cool is that?
it is so cool. And I love that. I love that you brought that in here because, yes, it's been about 15 years for me also. And different relationships have kind of come in and out, even ours, right? Like we started out, knowing each other way back at the beginning. And then we kind of were in separate worlds and didn't really have a lot of FaceTime together or airtime together. And then it's just like recently we've kind of circled back around, and now we have this whole new getting to know each other all over again, and like, wow, look at what you've done and see how this is. And and it's so fun to have these kind of long-term relationships with people, and been, like you said, alongside each other on the journey, but then seeing where just the beautiful process of unfolding that everybody goes through, and at what points do we connect and really dive in together, and what points we sort of like, oh, we're on different trajectories. And it's such a beautiful dance and just so enriching. I love it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I'm super grateful.
Yes, I love it. Well, Vanessa, it has been such a joy and honor and privilege to speak with you today. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation and lending us all of your amazing brilliance and teasing out this really rich topic of why we crave spiritual community. And I'm looking forward to weaving with you more as we build community together and continue to empower others in the context of, within their own selves, and meeting themselves where they're at, and then being able to shine that light and really live the truth of our being, and getting to do it side by side in the context of spiritual community.
Such an honor. Thanks for having me. Yes, more, please.
Yes, more, please. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for being here. Please do, if you haven't already joined the Inner Radiance Academy Club, you can click on the little greenhouse up there and join the Inner Radiance Academy Club.